Good evening, everybody, and welcome to not the Monday Night Jam. This is a little bit different for me. I'm used to being here entertaining you with some music, but tonight I am more than happy to bring a brand new program to Ripple Effects. Tonight I will be doing a little one-on-one interview, with the host of this new upcoming show. He wanted to jump on with somebody else and have a little chat. It's going to be a 4-week series. For the next 4 weeks, he's going to have his own special guests coming on to cover the topic of sport fishing here in Nova Scotia. So I am very happy to bring to Ripple Effects Mr. Matthew Szeto, who is from Sydney, but is now residing on the mainland. He's a hell of a fisherman. We haven't seen each other in, about 18 years since we walked out the doors of Sydney Academy.
Yeah, right. The good old days.
The good old day, the glory days.
The glory days, yeah.
Scary.
Good to see you again, man.
With that, yeah, it's great to see you too. Like I said, when we first jumped on there, it's been a while since we've seen one another, but hey,
yeah,
we're both still on the right side of the daisies.
That's the main thing, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah. So, welcome to Ripple Effects, Matt.
Thank you.
Glad that you jumped on. It was a call. It kind of came out of the blue. Rebecca messaged me and said, "Hey, a guy you went to high school said he watched your show. He loves the show. He wants to know if you can do his own show, and would you be interested in helping him?" I'm like, "Who are you talking about?" But she's like, "Well, Matt Szeto, he wants to do a fishing show." I'm like, "Absolutely. That sounds like a phenomenal idea."
Well, I'm excited, man.
Yeah, so it's cool, and it's great to come on and enlighten people a little bit more about fishing in Nova Scotia, because it's not just about going to the pond down the road or the lake that your grandfather and your father and everybody took you to. There's a lot more out there on the province when it comes to fishing.
Yeah, there is now. I mean, when grew up fishing in Cape Breton, we kind of chatted briefly there. It's basically trout. And then when I kind of came to the mainland, it was just like dumbfounded, really, with all these different species. And then it's a whole learning process. Like, how am I going to catch these things? Like, what's the best technique? And I'm still learning, really, but it was definitely out of my comfort zone coming here. Just even trying to track down trout in HRM was a challenge. And then really, I kind of got into the other species because I couldn't find any trout here.
Yeah, and it's really crazy to think that, like, you're 4 hours away from home, how different
completely
aquaculture it is.
Completely different. Yeah. I mean, there's still good trout around up here. It's still Cape Breton is still, in my heart, I guess they call what's the home of our hearts. Like that's me for fishing. Like I still think about it all the time, when I'm out trouting, I'm like, it's still not Cape Breton,
Yeah.
But there's good trouting to be done up here if you know where to look. Yeah. If you're willing to put the hours in and the distance in.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, it's, I'm in Cape Breton, and if I want to go out fishing, I'm going looking for some lake trout or some salmon on the Margaree River, and that's our culture here.
Yeah.
But you're a different kind of sport fishing up there. You're striped bass, chain pickerel, like the big, the heavy duty guys that like to fight you.
Yeah. Striped bass is pretty new to me, actually. But I mean, it's a world-class fishery we have up here, like huge fish and huge amounts of fish that come into the Shubenacadie and Stewiacke River. That's really what I focus on. A lot of people fish up in the Bay of Fundy too, and there's huge fish up there. I don't enjoy that as much. I used to do it a lot, just throwing out the bait and sitting in a chair and sitting back. Kind of got away from that now. I like to kind of target them in other ways, but it's still fun. I still do it from time to time. It's a good way to just kind of hang out with the guys and just kind of relax. You can do that in the summer, so you're kind of fishing off the beaches, and it's just, it's nice and it's cool to see the tides. Like you're fishing the Fundy tides, and like every 10 minutes you got to move your gear back, and so like the tides kind of chase you down. So it's a really unique fishery. You can't really find it anywhere else in the world, really.
Yeah, it's a lot different than sitting by Blackett's Lake. Same water over and over and over again.
Yeah, it's a little different. I remember my uncle took me the first time striped fishing. Where did he take me down? Economy River. And I remember walking down. It's kind of like, man, we left at like 3 a.m. because you got to fish the right tide, right? So we walked down and I'm like, holy, okay, great. Like it just looked like the ocean. And then when we were done, it was like literally ankle deep little stream in front of me. I was like, holy, like this is crazy.
Yeah.
Right. So it's really cool to see. And even like when I'm guiding on the Stewiacke and people see the tides, I had some guys from Germany last year and they're like, this is a tide? I was like, yeah. And I was like, in about an hour, it's going to go the other way. And they were just like amazed. And when we were done, like to see like where we launched, like you got to drag the boat up like a muddy bank. They were like blown away. They couldn't believe it.
It's crazy. So, like we just said, Cape Breton has its trout and its salmon and that, and you do the sport fishing up there. So what's the best way to say this? What's the big difference between Cape Breton and the Halifax fishery, other than the lack of trout? Like, how's the sport fishing up there compared to sport fishing here?
Well, there's a lot more people that target kind of the invasives, smallmouth bass, pickerel. I mean, there's just so many different species, and I think that's kind of the main difference. And then I guess like the waters you kind of fish, because the Bredor Lakes, it's like salt water, and you fish them a different way. I mean, there's definitely similarities. You still fish trout the same way you would in Cape Breton as you would here, but I think the sport fishing is really kind of, I can't even fathom a number. I would guess like 50% of people probably stick to smallmouth bass and pickerel, and I think that's because they're just easier to catch and find. Every lake in HRM has bass or pickerel in it. It's not hard to go and find them. It's not hard to catch them. And if people are looking for like some fish to take home and eat, like it's not hard. I mean, I can't count the number of times when I first started fishing in HRM, like when I came up here for university, how many times it would take me to actually like bring a trout home. Like you're talking 3-4 trips sometimes getting skunked before you even get a trout to bring home, where I could go to a lake and bring home a feed within a couple hours.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the main difference. I think there's just a lot more species to target. I think that would be the main difference, and different gear too. Like when you're targeting bass and pickerel, you're using different gear than trout. There's all kinds of different gear you could use that I would probably never use for trout. Top water lures and like big like surface lures and big soft plastic lures and stuff like that. So I think like that's kind of different.
Yeah. So you like, now I'm going to play the devil's advocate here, and we have viewers tuning in that what you're saying, and you might as well be talking like you're in outer space, because some people, this is new to them, right? So when you say invasive species, we're talking about a fish that can adapt to its surroundings.
Yeah, in a way. Basically, invasive species means that the fish were not really meant to be here. They were kind of put here. So there was, for example, like brook trouts are native species, residents. They've always been here. Bass and chain pickerel were introduced to Nova Scotia, and they're just kind of spreading through the lakes. I mean, HRM is they're everywhere. Like I said, chain pickerel started in the South Shore. Now they're all the way to Cape Breton. They got into Blackett's Lake back home there. What was that? Maybe more than 6 years ago now. It's been a while, I think. Yeah. But that's basically what invasive species means. It means a species that doesn't really belong here. And that's not just fish, that's anything. I mean, for example, Florida, where they got all the pythons that people release, they're invasive to Florida because they weren't meant to be there. So that's all really invasive species means. But unfortunately, the pickerel have really adapted here. And bass have really kind of adapted to our waters too.
What you got a question there, Matt? What species can we catch in Kinsack Lake?
Oh, well, I'm on Kinsack Lake, so that's easy. Game pickerel mostly. A lot of smallmouth bass too. There's white perch in there as well. Yellow perch in there. I've heard reports of some trout, but I've never seen one. I don't think there's very many left with the chain pickerel in there. What else is there? There's a brown bullhead, which is like a catfish. I've seen eels. Gasparilla will make the migration all the way up here, which is pretty cool because it's pretty far away from any salt water. That's about it. And there's some landlocked salmon every now and then. You'll run into some of those, but mostly when I'm fishing Kinsack, it's chain pickerel, smallmouth bass, and perch.
And she's got a follow up there as well. She wants to know, what is it good to eat? Simple as that. Like, is it just a sport fish to catch and release, or are these a tasty meal?
Chain pickerel is one of my favorite to eat. Actually, white perch and yellow perch. I really like white perch and yellow perch. Yellow perch is also an invasive species that wasn't really supposed to be here. White perch are native species. Chain pickerel are really good. The problem that people run into with chain pickerel is, I guess they're kind of bony. They have what's called Y bones. So basically, on the sides of them, the bones kind of stick out like a Y. So if you just kind of do your traditional fillet and fry it up, you'll probably never eat one again because it's just completely full of bones like a herring. But there's really there's two ways that you can kind of cut around them, and it's not very hard. The videos are all over YouTube. I actually put a video up on my Facebook page, my Fish on Guide service page, that shows how to do it. And they're a great fish, and we eat them all summer here. Smallmouth bass are pretty good too. I don't like them as much as the chain pickerel, but they're good. It's just like any other white fish. But yeah, they are really good. You got to figure out how to kind of debone them. Just watch a good video or check out the one I made.
Yeah. So with that, I will throw your Fish Nova Scotia page up in the comments there. So anybody that's tagging along with us right now, wondering what he's talking about, you can just jump on his page, give a like and give a follow, so you can see what's going on with Fish Nova Scotia. And Matt's actually a guided fish expert. He'll take you out on the lake. I know we're still working towards the whole COVID-19 restrictions on what he's allowed to do.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out, but there's been some good news that you can have more than one person in a boat. When they opened the season late this year, it was just kind of one person to a boat unless you were, family. So that kind of, I couldn't really guide then, obviously. But now they're allowing people in a boat as long as you can social distance and still kind of practice, safe sanitary and whatever, like hand sanitizer and stuff. So yeah, I'm still trying to work out a plan. I want to guide this summer. I just have to kind of figure out how exactly I'm going to go about it safely. And once I get that figured out, I'll be making a post soon.
Yeah. Also, I'm going to assume Joanne's probably close there. She's got all kinds of questions for you on the lake. So she's just wondering, what lures should she use? Worms as bait? Like, what's your bait of choice, I guess, when it comes to fishing in the lake up there?
If I'm targeting chain pickerel, and I really honestly don't really target them until summertime, really. Like, generally my spring is, I'm chasing trout. I'm still a trout guy. I grew up in Cape Breton fishing trout. I still like trout. Still my favorite. Trout, salmon. And then, our striped bass run will be starting here soon. So I kind of really don't mess with them until summertime. But when I do, by far the best technique is to use anything that's weedless. So when you rig up a bait that doesn't kind of hang up in the cover, because chain pickerel, they're actually also known as grass pike down in the States, because they'll literally stick to any kind of weed growth, grass, lily pads, and they'll hide in there and kind of ambush things coming by. So you really want to get into that heavy cover. And if you're not familiar with it, if you just kind of try to throw like spinners or Rapplas and stuff, you're going to just have a miserable time trying to keep the weeds off, and you're going to be snagged up. So there's certain ways that you can rig up baits weedless. So I use like soft plastic baits, and there's specially designed hooks where the hook point isn't exposed. So you can drag it right across all the heavy cover, around like logs, like through weed beds. And that's by far the best way to get them, because really you kind of got to go in that heavy stuff to really be like super successful with chain pickerel. Now, that's not to say that you have to fish them there. You can fish them in open water, and that's fine. And any other lure will work, your lures, your Rapplas, or any other hard body bait. I don't really use live bait for pickerel. It's not really necessary. They're pretty keen to take baits. They're pretty aggressive. You'll definitely want to have some type of steel leader, because their teeth are super sharp. And I've seen people, commenting and saying, "Oh, 20-pound braid is good enough if you're familiar with braided line," but it's not. They'll cut right through that. Now, in saying that, the last year I've been using fluorocarbon. Some people recommended I try fluorocarbon, so 15-pound fluorocarbon. It's just tougher than monofilament, and I haven't had any issue with that. but I also haven't really put it to the test yet. But I definitely recommend you have to have some type of steel leader. I prefer titanium. The titanium leaders don't really kink up like steel leaders. You can they can get all twisted up and they'll spring right back into shape. But those would be my tips for targeting chain pickerel.
And
maybe I'll whip out some baits on the next show and kind of show how to rig them up. Maybe.
Yeah. You got another question they're asking if a frog or mouse with a steel leader.
Yeah. So the frog baits are hollow body frogs, which is basically looks like a frog, and they're hollow inside, so they float on the surface. So basically, it's the same concept, dragging it over heavy cover. I like frogs. Like if I'm into a really heavy spot and I find like some of those other weedless setups are still kind of snagging up a bit, I'll go to a hollow body frog, and they can go right over anything. And yeah, definitely steel leader for those two, or your fluorocarbon. I mean, really, the only time I wouldn't use steel leader or fluorocarbon is if I'm using like a really big lure, like 6 inches, where they can't really always get it all the way in their mouth. Sometimes with the steel leaders, though, it'll sink the hollow body frog. So fluorocarbon might be a better option, or check out the titanium leaders, because they're a lot thinner, a lot lighter, and they won't affect the action. They won't sink the frog as much. But yeah, they're a great choice. And the mice ones are the same thing. They just look like a mouse that's hollow body too. The one tip I will give for hollow body frogs is when the fish takes the frog, you have to you kind of got to hold your nerve a bit and wait 1 or 2 seconds and then set the hook, because most times they grab it and they don't really have it in their mouth. It's almost like they T-bone it, or they got it in the tip of their mouth. And when they turn back down, they'll kind of suck it in. And that's when you want to set the hook. And I learned that the hard way. It took me a couple tries when I first started using them to figure it out. I was missing a lot of blow-ups, a lot of fish taking the bait, and I couldn't figure it out. And I got on Google there when I got home, and that's what everyone was saying, like, you got to pause. So if you're using
as excited as you are to grab that fish, you got to just let.
Yeah, I know it's hard, when you see this huge fish come up and hit this thing, and, you just want to right away, but, you kind of got to keep your composure and just give it 1 or 2 seconds and then set the hook.
Yeah, it's worth it in the long run. And Joanne also wants to know, can she just fish from the shore? Does she have to be out in a boat? What's the better of the two?
You're always going to have an advantage in the boat, but it's not necessary. I mean, if you're fishing from shore, same thing. Walk the shoreline, find a weedy growth spot. If you're walking the shoreline, you see the shoreline's kind of a grass patch there. Fish all those spots. Fish any structure you see. Is there a log in the water? Is there boulders? You're walking the shoreline and it's shallow, and you kind of look out and you can see it drops off. Fish drop offs. Anything that kind of relates to a structure. Fish like structure. They'll be hanging on structure. I always, when I'm fishing chain pickerel, I don't even really fish just open water. I'll find all the structure I can, all the weed. Most of the times I spend fishing chain pickerel, if that's what she's referring to, chain pickerel, is weed growth. I'll spend the whole day just fishing weed beds.
Like you said, they hide. They like to hide so they can attack.
Yeah, they'll hide right in there. And sometimes if you're fishing a weed bed, you'll see it's really thick lily pad, and then there'll be an opening, a pocket. They usually kind of sit there and they're looking up and they're just waiting for something to come by. So it helps if you're in a boat or even on shore. It really helps to have polarized glasses too, to kind of see what's down there. Because sometimes it's not always weed growth on the surface that's really good. I've actually been having a lot of success in the last 2 years fishing submerged weed growth, where it's 5 feet under the surface and weed edges. And if you don't have polarized glasses, you can't see where those weed edges are. So I would really, encourage anyone to get a decent pair of polarized glasses. And you don't have to go spending hundreds of dollars. There's all kinds of good ones for, between $30, $50, something like that. They're a huge advantage.
Also, she wants to know, she heard rumor that fishing in the rain is better. Is there truth to that?
I would say that's probably true for trout from my experience. Overcast days are usually pretty good, but it depends on the species. Smallmouth bass do not like cold fronts. If you get a cold front coming through or a drop in barometric pressure, they'll shut right down. and the bite gets really tough. If there's a cold front that comes through in the summer, I don't even fish smallmouth bass for 2 or 3 days. It's very, very tough. You can go out now. In saying that, on an approaching cold front, as the pressure's dropping, the bite will be red hot. So if you are looking at the weather and it's nice, and you get kind of like, ooh, there's a little bit of a cold front coming, the temperature's going to drop tomorrow, you're going to get a little bit of rain, fish that day before that comes, or fish as it's coming in, and it's usually pretty good. But 2 days after that, it's a really tough bite. And apparently it's because the pressure kind of hurts their air bladder, like they get just like discomfort. So I think it depends on the species. And striped bass are the same way. They're really sensitive to cold fronts too. So different species, yes, good in the rain. Other species, not so much.
So we're talking like HRM, and a lot of this up there, and like your striped bass and your smallmouth bass and that. But it is the K-Retin thing now too. Like we were talking on the phone the other day, and like the East Bay sandbar, for example.
Right.
It went from nobody was ever down there fishing. I remember fishing there as a kid with my dad, and we caught a couple cod fish in there on the lagoon side, and you'd get the odd trout in that now. But like the striped bass, there's a good run that comes through there.
Yeah, the population of striped bass is really exploding, and it's funny you said that about cod too, because I had this conversation just the other day. Like that whole East Bay area and other areas of the lake used to have all kinds of codfish, and it was like a matter of like a year or two, they were just gone.
Yeah,
it was crazy. I don't know if you experienced that as well, but I know I was talking to some other guys from Cape Breton, like, yeah, it's weird. No one really knows what happened. Maybe they do know what happens. Maybe I just don't know what happened, but I thought that was really strange. But I did see some pictures of some being caught this spring out in Waikagama, which is kind of cool. So I guess they're hopefully making a resurgence.
Yeah.
Well, but yeah, striped bass, yeah, their population has exploded. I mean, they're all through the Northumberland Strait now. Miramichi there has a huge number of striped bass up in New Brunswick. And yeah, they're through Cape Breton. I got a couple at the East Bay Sandbar a couple of years ago, and that was like the first I've seen of them. I know that they used to get a few that come through. They were always really big. Actually, the Canadian record was caught down there. I don't know if you knew that.
No,
58 pounds by Christian Levette caught it right down in the sandbar there. But that's kind of all you really heard about striped bass. You get a small run of really big fish, but now you're seeing a lot of small ones, and all around the island, really, like all up in Marguerite, they're catching them down there in a seal pool at the lower end of Marguerite, catching striped bass right in the salmon pools.
Yeah, so they're moving. I wonder if is it something to do with the climate change? The waters are getting a little bit warmer. Like, I wonder what's really bringing that.
I think that's definitely a factor in my opinion. I think it's a factor. I mean, just looking at like Halifax Harbor in the last 3 years, the amount of tropical fish that have been coming in the harbor that people are posting on like the fishing pages on Facebook. Like, what fish is this? What fish is that? And I remember looking, I think it was last year, the year before, a bunch of people were getting bonito, which is like down in the warmer waters. And I looked at the picture, I was like, I think that's a bonito. Like, it's crazy. And a couple of years ago, my uncle called me to look at this fish, and it was a triggerfish, which I've only ever seen down in the Caribbean. So, and apparently there's been like numerous triggerfish seen since then in the summertime. So
the stream is dragging them this way.
Yeah, and the great white sharks that are around here too. Like,
yeah, well, they don't just swim up here because they're curious. They're following food.
Yeah, yeah. But for the striped bass, I definitely think climate has a part in it, and I think there's been efforts too down on the eastern seaboard, if I'm not mistaken. There's been a lot of conservation efforts, so I think that the population is picking back up down there, and I think that has kind of an effect on us too. But I've heard they're even up towards like Labrador now, all the way up there.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you said Blackett's Lake we're good for pickerel. Somebody introduced that probably about 5-6 years ago. Somebody illegally introduced it to the lake, and then smallmouth bass. I know, and this is probably about 15 years ago on Causeway Drive. I caught 2 catfish one night. I was just like, no idea that they were even in the lake, but they came out barking and wailing at me and everything. Didn't know what the hell was on the end of the line.
Yeah.
And but now I heard like Lake Ainsley is now
smallmouth bass
Smallmouth bass, yeah. So
Striped bass in there now too. I've
yeah,
heard reports in the last few years of people catching striped bass in there. But yeah, Lake Ainsley's had bass for a while now, and apparently it's a really good bass fishery from what people have told me.
yeah, and
There's a
it's
lot of them up there.
but you hear people saying now, like, you're saying Halifax is used to this, and this has been going on for a while, and Cape Breton's the trout fishery, like we're all trout fishermen down here.
Mm-hmm.
You hear people say, well, they're in the lake now, kill the lake and get rid of them and start all over.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I've heard that about Blackett's Lake quite a few times too. People saying, just kill the lake off, just destroy it, give it a few years, and then start restocking it again.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
I don't like the idea. I don't like the idea. If you kill everything off in the lake, here's my fear with that. And I don't know if there's any truth to this, but like just me thinking as like an angler. Yeah, okay. Let's say we kill the lake off. Let's say we kill Blackett's Lake off. We kill everything in it, and then we try to restock it with trout. Well, what if the trout don't take off? What if it doesn't establish itself again? Then you got a dead lake. Now I know it's got the connection to the salt, so you probably will. So maybe it would work in Blackett's Lake. But then if you're killing off the lake, like what else are you killing besides fish?
Yeah.
That's a very drastic. Now that, in my opinion, it's the only way it's going to work. It's the only way you'll ever get chain pickerel out there. I don't care how many you kill. We got a 100 chain pickerel bag limit in Nova Scotia. You won't kill them just by taking them out of, like, just catching as many as you can or throwing them in the woods. It's not gonna happen.
You won't catch them all.
You won't catch them all. You won't catch them all. And I think that, killing off everything in the lake is the only way to do it. But I don't know if it'll ever be done, because I think that I would assume that fisheries and stuff have the same fear. Like, okay, we can put them back in, but what if it doesn't work?
Yeah.
Then what? Now, I don't know. I'm not a fisheries person. I'm not a biologist. Maybe it would work. Maybe that is the way to do it. But I'm scared of that idea. If someone told me they were going to come and do that to Kinsack, I'd be scared, because what if it doesn't work? Then I got no fish to catch. Then that lake is dead.
Yeah, and like you said, you're not just killing the fish species. You're killing, you're killing your frog, your minnow, your bird. You're killing everything. If there's no food for everybody, then there's not going to be anything.
It's a chain reaction. If you do that, it's a huge chain reaction. It's no different than putting, chain pickerel in a system. There's a huge chain reaction with that too. Like when I was talking to a neighbor here when I first moved into this place on Kinsack, and they were telling me about how good the trout fishing was. But something that they mentioned that I really didn't think about, they're like, do you ever hear night peepers here, like the frogs? I was like, no, it's strange. Usually anytime I'm near water, I hear them. Like, yeah, pickerel killed them all. So it's, like there's so much of an effect when you put any invasive species in. So if you're thinking about killing off a lake, what else are you going to affect? Like, okay, if you kill off some other things that aren't chain pickerel, your frogs or your, even microorganisms or whatever, how is that going to affect all the other animals that feed off fish in that area?
Yeah. And like a comment there from Chris, if you can go and do that all you want, somebody wants to reintroduce it illegally, they've already done it before. So what's going to stop them from doing it again?
And, they don't really need much water to get from place to place. And I mean, all you really need to do is go on Google Earth and look at lakes and see how many are connected by a small waterway.
Yeah.
So are you going to kill all the waterways? Blackett's Lake goes all the way.
Oh yeah, you're
what's that river? Is it French River it's called or something? Like they're all the way up there now, apparently, like all the way up in is it Meadows Brook, that area?
No, it goes like Blackett's Lake, and then it goes all the way up through Coxheath, right up the back of Gillis's Lake. Like there's all kinds of waterways that connect up there. And like you said, they don't need much water to spawn to get through. So I think one of the last things I heard, the big worry about them being in Blackett's Lake is that they were more worried about them starting to come down the channel more towards Sydney, because there's a salmon run that comes in through there that goes up through just by I can't even think of the name of it, just by the Tim Hortons and the little 7 Mile bridge there and Howie Center.
Okay. Yeah,
right.
That's the brook I was talking about. I thought it was called French Brook, but yeah, I know the one you're talking about. Yeah.
So they're worried about, like, that used to be a big salmon spot. There's a salmon pool up at the end of that. So they're worried that the pickerel are going to get in there and start affecting the salmon fishery. in the
Yeah.
area.
Yeah. I heard they were already up there. Someone told me they were already up there. So that's
Yeah.
that's a shame. And that's what it is. People don't think about that, right? They think, oh, I really like catching chain pickerel. I'm going to go dump them in this lake, but they don't think like that lake connects to 50 other lakes.
Yeah.
And this is how it all started, right? This is how it all started. One guy people just not thinking about the effect and the chain reaction it can have. Like these fish were not meant to be here, like, biologically or evolution wise, like, our environment, our habitat wasn't meant for them. They can't compete with it. All like frogs and everything else too. Like I've watched twice in my life. I've watched chain pickerel take down baby ducklings.
Yeah.
So they'll take anything they can get their mouths around. So it's a huge chain reaction.
Yeah, and like like you said earlier, they started in Yarmouth, and
Mhm.
somebody in Yarmouth said just that. I like fishing them. I'm going to throw them in this lake, and that's it. And then
Yeah,
that lake went to the next lake, to the next lake, to the next river, to the next lake, and now you're up like Halifax, Truro, Shubenacadie, like they're fully making their way through.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, I don't know of any lakes around Antigonish County, or even I think there might be one or two in Pictou. I don't know about Antigonish County, but for them to skip the causeway, they didn't swim across the causeway. So
No, no,
some
somebody
people
brought
call
them
it,
here and slid them in, and that was that.
yeah, and I don't know why they would ever do that, but who knows?
Yeah, somebody had the idea that they want to do. They watched too many of those Saturday morning fishing shows and said, "I'm going to do that. I'm going to
Yeah,
get those fish
yeah.
off here."
I
And
have my suspicions, but
uh, yeah, Nate Paul's got a comment there. He's wondering, given the larger B1 events starting to come to Nova Scotia, do you foresee a rise in bass fishing and bass anglers here in Nova Scotia?
I already do see a rise in the popularity of bass fishing. Um, there's just more people fishing now in general. Like you kind of were saying about the sandbar, you'd never see anybody. I mean, there's lots of places I fish now where we wouldn't see anybody. Now you see people everywhere. I think just more people are getting into fishing.
Yeah.
I think people are starting to see the opportunities, and then you got in the last few years, like social media has really taken off, and people are seeing like all these fish posts, and like, geez, it seems like everyone's catching fish everywhere. I think that kind of plays a part into it too. But I definitely think that these bigger tournaments are definitely going to draw people into like the tournament fishing for sure. I do, and I already see it. I see more people getting into tournaments and the idea of tournaments, and we got some other smaller groups that do their own tournaments, like not like the B1, like with the big bass boats and stuff like that, like just kind of smaller groups. Like we have one up here, the mini bass boaters that are basically limit you to a certain size motor. I think it's 10 horsepower motor. You can't have more than 10 horsepower motor for like smaller watercraft. So, and they're pretty popular. So I definitely see, definitely more people getting into it for sure.
Yeah, and aside from the bass fishing, like I said, fishing overall has taken off. Like
Yeah.
look at Waikagama, for example. When they open up the fishing season this year, I know a lot more people had time on their hands to go fish,
Yeah.
but a lot of those are new anglers that are going out there. They actually had to like go to the fisheries department and say, like, you got to shut this area down. We can't. It's a
And they
safety
did.
concern. There's so many people out here fishing right now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Waikagama was crazy. I mean, I saw that, and they did eventually shut it down until August. Is it August? I think.
Yeah, I can't
But,
really. They had to completely block the roads. Like you're not allowed to fish in there at all because I
yeah.
mean there was 3-4 kilometers long of cars parked on the side of the Trans Canada Highway, blocking everything, and like you couldn't go an arm's length away from somebody on the shore fishing. And I mean it's busy up there year round, anyways. There's good ice fishing up there, and it's normally, but again, there's nothing for most people to do. You're allowed to go out and do some recreational fishing and that. So there's people that have said, "Yeah, I'll give that a try and I'll go out." And I heard that's a good spot. And
Yeah. Well, that's it. And like you said, a lot more time for people to fish. Like, with people off work and put off work with, everything that's going on, why not go to Waikagama? I mean, you're going to catch fish there is the thing. Like, it's so easy to catch fish, even for the beginner, and the thing about the escaped trout, I kind of think they're kind of dumb. Like, they're not really, if you're like targeting, in my opinion, wild trout compared to the escapees, the wild trout are way pickier. They're way harder to catch.
yeah.
But the escaped fish, all they know is just like eat. Like I've been anything like you just throw some power bait out there and you're going to catch one.
Yeah.
And, and people want to go and catch a feed. Like, when is it? Like, it's not every day you can go there and pound off a dozen 6 to 8 pound rainbow trout. I mean, my biggest wild rainbow trout, I think, was 5.5 pounds. And you can go out there and catch a dozen that are like, 24 inches long. Like, sure, why not? And you're allowed, 5 fish to take home. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with the fish. It's no different than fish you'd get at Sobeys or Superstore. You know what I mean? And maybe even better now that they've been in the system so long. Like, anything that they were fed is probably well out of their system now.
Yeah, like we talked about earlier, it's, fishing season started later than it's normal.
Right.
So they're a little bit bigger, they're a little bit hungrier,
Mm-hmm.
they're a little like they're hitting a little bit more.
Yeah.
And like I said, the hatchery fish are used to, like, all you got to do is just give them something and they'll go after it.
Right.
Right. Like, I know Tank Pond out next to my regat.
My regat, yeah.
Yeah. You go out there, they stock that lake every year, and I mean, you can catch some good fish.
Mm-hmm.
But if you take a handful of the pea gravel that's on the side of the road and throw it at the water, the fish go ballistic.
Yeah.
I think it's feeding time.
Yeah.
So that's as easy as it is to go out there and catch them. I mean, they use it for derbies and stuff, but there's no fun in that to me.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't really, I mean, sure. I mean, catching fish is fun.
Yeah.
When we heard how many people were catching them, I think they got out in like September, I think. And I went down in December, solely just to kind of check it out. And why not? Like, there's no other fishing to be done up here in December unless you want to fish chain pickerel. So we thought, hey, like, we're still allowed to go down to the Bredor Lakes and fish for trout. Let's go down, get our 2 fish, and go back home. And like, right, two fish to take home. And I think we caught a dozen in only a couple hours. We just drove down for the day and drove back. And, like, really easy to catch. Like, I've trout fished in Cape Breton a long time. Like, those fish, the wild browns and the wild rainbows, are very picky most times. Like, you got to really have it dialed in to be successful. Like, I've gone and got skunked a lot of times where fish are just breaking all around me and chasing bait everywhere. I definitely think they're a little bit easier to catch. But I mean, that's great. That's great for people who are looking to go out and get a feed. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nothing against it. Go ahead. If I was down there, sure. If I wanted a trout, I'd go get one. I don't really, I release most of my trout now. I don't even remember the last time I kept my limit outside of those 2 that I got in December. It's been a long time. But hey, go get your 5 fish. Nothing against you. You buy your license. You have the right to go get 5 fish.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, people ask the worms and the bait and all that. If I fish, I go a few different spots up in Orangedale. I'll catch crawdad right there on the shore and hook that. And I find
that your weapon. Don't say that too loud.
Man, I've never seen more fun come out of that, right?
But
there's the
technique, like I said, where you dial it in, like, that's, I mean, you're not going to get anything better than a live crawdad. That's what they're feeding on. But basically, the 2 big things they feed on are crawdads, or I think grass shrimp is their actual name.
Yeah.
Or silver sides. We used to call them shiners, but Atlantic silver sides. I mean, if you have those as live bait, like, you're going to be successful, But I mean, if you're throwing lures and stuff around, it's a lot tougher. Like, those fish are not stupid.
But as easy it is to catch the live bait, there is a very particular art to baiting your hook with them, because the fish will clean them. Like,
absolutely.
As soon as it hits the water, they're gone.
Yeah.
And if you don't
right size hook, hook them in the right place, for sure.
Yeah, again, I've used this. It took me a long time and lots of scraping the bottom to get that bait caught, to figure out, all right, how do I put this on this hook to stop that fish from taking it before I even get a hook in its mouth?
I know. I feel your pain. I know. That had happened many a time. And it's crazy how well, like, a big fish you think he'll just suck that whole thing in and he'll poke that right off the hook.
Yeah. Like,
they know what they're doing.
No problem. Yeah. They're very, very well educated for fish.
Yeah. I've actually found that fly fishing is actually, I've had better success fly fishing than I have throwing lures. And I think it's just because, you fish the shrimp patterns, it's pretty close. Like, if you're fly fishing with, like, little shrimp patterns, I think there's a guy, I can't remember his last name, Gordy's flies. He's got really good shrimp flies. Or Lester the lobsters are really, it's one of the only flies I use when I fish the Bredor. Just anything that looks like one of those crawdads, and you're pretty successful with those. Before I got into fly fishing, when I was younger, we used to go through the bait shops and try to figure out anything that looked like one of those little crawdad shrimps, and there was no lures ever that would kind of replicate it. There was some things that were close, and
even the wraps, like the wraps are still like they do have some crawdad wraps out there, but I mean they're not the same.
No, they're not.
Nothing's the same there.
But I mean, if you've got flies that look like the crawdads, the shrimp, and flies that look like silver sides, you'll catch fish.
Yeah.
You'll catch.
Nate Paul's wondering, do you think having chain pickerel and smallmouth bass coexisting breeds larger fish compared to a lake with just one or the other?
Ooh. That's a great question. I think, I honestly, I don't think it matters now in saying that, I have found that lakes with chain pickerel like Kinsack, I find it a lot harder to find bigger smallmouth bass for some reason. Lakes without chain pickerel, I seem to have more success finding bigger bass. I don't know if there's a relation or if I just suck. I don't know. But that's one thing I've noticed. But chain pickerel in any body of water, I've always caught, like if there's chain pickerel in a body of water, I've always managed to find big ones. They grow a lot faster than bass. Bass actually grow really slow. I'm not sure the exact numbers, but I think it was something like a 2-pound bass, which is like 15 inches, is like almost 8 years old or something, 8 to 10 years old. They grow really slow. Chain pickerel grow a lot faster.
Chain pickerel also eat a hell of a lot more.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that too. But yeah, they're chain pickerel are pretty good at what they do. So they're pretty tough on the waterways. But that's a good question, Nate. You kind of got me stumped. I'll have to Google that later.
Yeah. I don't know if you know this guy, but Ryan Zito wants to know.
I don't know. I don't want to take his question.
No relation there, though, is there, right? He wants to know, can you tell some of us beginners what is the advantages or disadvantages to using gear rods meant for bigger fish and waters? Is something like a brook for smaller fish. I've always just used a 20-pound line with a very stiff rod.
Yes, he has. Yeah, rod types, you definitely want certain rod types for certain species that you're targeting. I have a lot of rods in my garage, and it's not because I just like buying different rods. It's because I literally have rods for every situation. So generally for trout, you kind of want, it depends kind of, if you're after like the little brooks and stuff where your trout aren't really going to get too big, you can probably get away with an ultralight or light action reel, something a little softer, not reel, rod, something a little softer, 4 to 6 pound line. And then if you're getting into like some bigger fish, 6 to 8, 10 max. I don't like to really go above 8, just use your drag right. You'll land them. And probably like a medium action rod for that. Like, if you're fishing in the Bredor Lakes and you get into like a big fish, 5, 6 pounds or something, you're going to want a medium action rod. You can do it on a light action, but, a medium is kind of what I would recommend. I wouldn't go with a stiffer action rod. Stiffer action rods, like fast action rods, medium heavy rods, are kind of what you would want for smallmouth bass and pickerel. Because like I said, you fish them in heavy cover, so you want like the kind of the backbone and the rod to kind of pull them out of the structure. So for example, when you're fishing smallies or chain pickerel, that's when I use braided line, because braided line is no stretch. So you can put like 20-pound braided line, which is really thin, has a diameter of like 6 to 8 pound monofilament. And you need that stiff rod and the tough line to kind of pull them out of the weeds. Because if you hook a big chain pickerel, the first thing he's going to do is run you into the lily pads. And I mean, really, your success rate's is like maybe 50%. If you hook a big chain pickerel in the lily pads, like there's a small window to really turn his head and get him swimming the right way. Because if you don't and he goes into the lily pads, it's really hard to get him out. And the one advantage to braided line too is when they go into that heavy structure, it's kind of slick, it's kind of sharp. So you can kind of cut through a little bit of that lily pad if you get hung up with your lure or if the fish goes in there. If you're trying to fish with those and like with monofilament, there's no way you're getting them out of that grass. If you try with 8-pound line, you're just going to break your line. So, but with trout, I wouldn't recommend braid. I don't think it's necessary. I think just a really good monofilament line and maybe a fluorocarbon leader at the end because trout are pretty picky sometimes, especially in clear water. That's kind of what I recommend. Leave the medium heavies and the stiffer action rods to like bass and pickerel or fish that you're fishing in heavy cover or even striped bass. For trout, ultralight up to medium action, 4-pound to 8-pound, 10-pound monofilament line. That's what I would roll with.
All very good information, and like you said, from sport with large species down to your small brook. It's good to know because you see, you walk by the fish aisle at Walmart or Canadian Tire, and you see, the guy's going, I'm going with the 12-pound test.
Yeah.
You see the little tiny rod out, like they're going to fish a couple brooks with a 12-pound line on.
Yeah.
Like it's a little bit overkill unless you're planning on hooking the tree branches all night.
Oh, maybe that's why they buy it. I don't know. But
yeah,
it is. And, trout can see that, like big trout are smart, they're not, they're not stupid. Like even, I really gotten into nymph fishing on the fly rod. And it's amazing. You'll see these big fish laying in a spot. And, like sometimes you'll have to drop down to like a 6-pound tippet on your fly, like at the end of your fly line. Like a tippet is basically like a small stretch of like your last piece of line before the fly. Like drop it right down to fluorocarbon, like 4 to 6-pound line. And a nymph, which is basically, if you're not familiar with a nymph, it's like kind of like an insect larvae, like, a hatch comes on, like a mayfly or something, like the larvae stage is what we call a nymph. And it's just a little, sometimes weighted fly, very small. It could fit on like your pinky fingernail. And it's amazing that those fish won't even look at any other fly and they'll take this small little tiny nymph. So they're very smart. And you sometimes, if you're using big hardware, you're not gonna fool those big fish sometimes. Now that's not to say you won't, but I always try to finesse it. I always try to use the minimal of what I really need.
It's much easier for them to catch on seeing something. I mean, all you got to do is walk by a fish. Like you stand over a bridge and see the fish. As soon as they see your shadow, they spook. So if they're in the water,
listen, I've crawled across on my belly, like crawling down military style through grass to get into a good casting spot just to get these fish. Because if you go tromping down the river edge, like you're spooking fish. And if you know a spot, there's a good pool coming up, and I know there's fish in it. Like take your time. Take your time. Like I said, like I've knelt right down, crawled like on my belly through grass, crawled 25 feet on my stomach just to get into a spot. And that's what you got to do sometimes. If you're really after the big one, like they didn't get big because they were stupid. You know what I mean? Like they got big because they were smart.
Yeah. And that's a big difference between doing river versus lake. Like you can go in the lake, you can go in,
you're pretty safe not to spook a fish out in the Bredor Lakes, but if you're crawling into a river, they know you're there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I know, like for me, for example, like I go fishing out in the lake. Like I'm not small, I'm 6'3", so a pair of chest waders to me is hip waders. Just, like I mean, I can go I'm way out there when I go, and I'm still not concerned about bothering the fish because I know they're out deep. But if I were to do that in a brook or a river, I'd be almost in the middle of it, and there'd be nothing around me for God knows how long. As they can see you, they can feel you, they feel the adjustments. Even when you hit the water yourself with your feet, that's a spook. Right, and that's a mistake that you see people making all the time. Right, you see them running around, jumping, banging their feet, and trunking into the riverside, and then complaining that they're not getting any fish. And well, you came in here like you were, driving a bulldozer. I wouldn't stick around too much either.
Yeah, I mean, fish are definitely, they're keen. Even if aluminum boats, you drop the, you knock the pliers off the seat and bangs the bottom of the boat, it's just like, you know, you might as well bring like one of those big gongs in the water, like they know you're there. There's actually a spot I fish close to home. It's got really crystal clear water. And normally if you walk down there early in the morning, you know, you'll see fish breaking, and you got a couple of chances. You got a couple casts before they're onto you. You know, as soon as you walk in the water and it's flat calm, you just see the ripple going out. So you got to take your time. I think that's one piece of advice I would give people is, you know, just take your time. Don't be in a hurry. You know, if you're whatever kind of fishing you're doing, especially with trout and salmon and stuff, like take your time. If you don't have to get in the water, don't get in the water. You know what I mean? Take your time. Don't go rushing down there, and you'll really see a big difference. You know, you'll see a big difference.
Yeah. So, aside from the sport fishing with the, you know, the heavy fish, it is, you know, it's open now, and a lot more people are, like you said, we said, are coming out and doing the trout fish here in Cape Breton. So, what is your best advice that you could throw out to somebody that's a new angler that's going to go out and give this a try? Because, you know, there's nothing more frustrating than saying, I'm going to go out and do this, and you see everybody else catching fish. And I know it's trial and error. You do what's a Matt Szeto tip that you can throw somebody to say you're probably going to get a little bit more luck with this bait or this spot, or where can you recommend somebody go for their first adventure out?
You know, as a beginner, it can be very overwhelming. You know, I mean, I think if you just kind of keep it simple, I think if you're a beginner and you're looking just to kind of get out or get the kids out or get the family out or just yourself, I definitely recommend trying to find like one of the stocked ponds around, you know, that are stocked with rainbow trout, or I mean, I guess Waikagama down there, that's basically stocked too. I would recommend doing that. There's a lot of fish in there. They're easy to catch and kind of get a feel for it. But if you're like trying to prepare before going to those stocked ponds, it's definitely worthwhile to look someone up who does fish and say, hey, like I want to get into it. I wonder if you can kind of take me out, show me the ropes, or, you know, get on like Facebook and join into some of the fishing groups there. You know, people are very willing to help. You know, just kind of say like, you know, you're getting into it. This is what you want to target. You know, this is where you live, and people are pretty good to kind of point you in the right direction. But I think if you're beginning, keep it simple. Just get some worms, get some bait, you know, get some good floats. You know, I'm sure if you go in a tackle shop and just tell them I'm just looking for basic hardware, like just some floats and split shot, I just want to, you know, use some bait. You're going to catch fish. You go to some nice little brook, you know, just with some worms and whatever, and, you know, you'll be successful. And then, you know, as you kind of get better, you know, then you might kind of dabble into lures and stuff, you know. I wouldn't recommend as a beginner to just kind of go out and buy a bunch of lures, because, I mean, there's different techniques to fishing them, you know, and if you're not really familiar with casting, like it's maybe not a good idea to be throwing a big rappler around with 2 treble hooks on it, you know.
Yeah.
But I would definitely recommend just getting some simple hardware and going out to like a stocked pond, and, you know.
And you can go on there is an actual, I don't know if it's natural resources, I can't remember where it is, but you
are you going to talk about the stocking list?
Yeah,
right.
And it shows you.
Yeah, that's on novascotia.ca, I think.
Yeah, so you can go on and see what ponds, lakes, whatever that they're stocking. So you can actually, I know they stock Scotch Lake out here on the north side every year. I've never caught a fish there in my life, no matter how many times I go, but they stock it. I just, they don't like me, I guess. And, you know, I seen them going out Marion Bridge. I was actually behind the fish truck the other day going out Marion Bridge way. I almost wanted to follow him right to where he was going to see where exactly he was going to hide.
You would have been the only person to do that. There's been other people that have done that before. You would have been.
Yeah. Jen wants to know, is McCabe Lake stocked? Well, you can go on the natural resources page there for Nova Scotia and find that out. Said, we've spent hours fishing this year and not a single fish. Do you want to come over and see if you can catch one?
Sure. Yeah. McCabe Lake's good. McCabe Lake, I don't know if McCabe Lake is directly stocked, but they stock the Sackville River, which runs into McCabe. So a lot of those fish would probably find their way into it. I mean, I would say just persevere, keep going, keep fishing, you know. You'll figure out what works. You if you're just kind of fishing off your property right on the lake, not all spots in a lake are good. Not fish don't always congregate. Everyone that there's certain places they'll congregate. Maybe you're just on a spot that a lot of fish don't congregate in. So maybe you try walking up and down the shoreline, look for structure, look for points, look for boulders, look for things where you think a fish would kind of hide and try to ambush prey. And then certain times of the year fish come in shallower, and sometimes they go deeper. It's all trial and error. But if you want me to come out, show you how to catch some fish in there, I'll do it. Yeah, I'm up for that.
There you go. That's your homework for the week. You got to go over to McCabe Lake.
There we go. Catch a fish in McCabe Lake. Yeah, done.
At least then you can say, yeah, look, there's fish here. We got them.
Yeah.
Now they're here.
There's actually some nice fish in there. I've heard there's some big bass in there. I've never caught one, but I know they're in there. Yeah.
Well, it's a good start. It'll be another adventure for you to go out and see and get you off your lake for a little while and go for a little drive.
Yeah.
And it's good because you have somebody that usually travels with you, Tim. He does your photo and some video work for you, so it'll be good.
Yeah, my buddy Tim Myers. He's a professional photographer there and filmmaker, and does incredible work. Super talented. Yeah, great guy too. Fly fishes, loves fly fishing. We both do, and yeah, we have good times when we get on the water. It's good.
Yeah. You put out some good content, which is on your page, which I just shared again.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody that's tagging along and enjoying this here, give Matt's Fish Nova Scotia page for his angling guide and tips that he'll be sharing throughout his Facebook page and that. And also, this will be a weekly program for the next, this is week 1, so we got 3 more weeks of you coming on. I won't be here next week. Matt's going to be the host next week. This was kind of the icebreaker to get him comfortable in front of the screen so that we knew he could handle doing the interview process. So Matt will be back next Wednesday night, 9:00. Again, next Wednesday night, with his own panel of guests to sit down and chat and answer some questions about fishing here in Nova Scotia as the season gets a little bit better. And hopefully I can find a couple hours to finally get myself out on the lake.
Yeah, get yourself out there. You're in the you're in the number 1 trout fishery in Nova Scotia in Cape Breton.
Yeah, I'm also.
I'm sure the Pictou County and Antigonish guys might have something to say about that, but it's all good, man.
Yeah, those Pictou County guys got something to say about everything all the time.
It's all good, man.
If I wasn't,
you got to represent your your area, right? That's okay.
Yeah.
There's great fishing down there. Listen, I fished down there a couple times. It's great fishing down there. I'm not knocking Pictou County and Antigonish County.
No, it's all good.
I really should be fishing it more, honestly, but
Yeah, no, I've been just, like I said, I'm in renovation mode, so I've just been day in and day out swinging a hammer instead of swinging a fishing rod. So I need one of those days just to disappear.
Yeah.
I just need the shoulders to work a little bit from all the hammer swinging to be able to throw the rod out.
Yeah, great way to relieve some stress, man. That's one of the main reasons I do it, just to decompress. I really missed it in April there. All I was going crazy, and I think a lot of us were. I think that's. I think it's important to a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's there's nothing better and calming than sitting out on that lake, nice and quiet, all by yourself, and nobody around for, the place I go and hide. Not many people know about it. So, and if they do know about it, it's probably one of my old man's friends. So it's chat with one of them.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, Matt, thanks so much for the show tonight. It was great sitting down chatting with you. I picked up some information myself that I didn't really know. So I'm sure other people have picked up on it, and great questions coming in from our viewers. I can't wait till next week's show. I'll tune in to tag along. I'll also have to guide you through a little bit before we get started here, so you know what you're doing with mission control. But other than that, man, thanks for the chat. I do appreciate it. Again, folks, Matt will be back next Wednesday night, 9:00, to talk some more fishing stories. Tomorrow night, Thursday night, we have Dylan DeVoe's guitar show with this week's guest, Jordan Musician, tomorrow night at 9:00. And then back Monday night again for the Monday Night Jam, as well as we got some other programs running here on Ripple Effects with interviews with Mike Kellaway and Jaime Batiste. And actually, I believe the fisheries minister is going to be on as well, or she was on earlier. I'm pretty sure she was on. Yeah, she was on earlier. So it's a good night for talk fish. And all of these videos, you can go back if they're not live. Once we're done broadcasting, you can go back and watch them all over again in case you missed any information or want to go over it one more time.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
Man. It was a
Well,
great
again,
time. Thank you.
yeah, thank you for allowing me to come on here and interview you and chat this out. And welcome to Ripple Effects. We're glad to have you on here, and it's a great program. I can't wait to watch. It reminds me of being a kid wanting to watch cartoons on Saturday morning, and the old man saying, "Not until my fishing show's over."
Yeah, yeah. That's a good way to put it. Thanks,
Yeah,
man.
absolutely. All right. Good night, folks.
Good night, Taylor Hines.